Femi, thank you so much for coming through tonight on Game On. The question that I want to ask you, they say hardship contract. So is it that she's going to be breaking firewood, or is she going to be carrying a load on her head from the market to, I don't know. What does a hardship contract mean for those who don't know?
Me to the firewood thing. I was going to say it's not like she's going to be carrying firewood on the backs for the team. So the hardship contract is actually a clause in the organization of the NBA where they allow teams who have a full roster. Full roster means 12 players signed for the season, and they have less than 10 players that are healthy for a long stretch of time, with a minimum of 3 weeks to recover. Now we're at the tail end of the WNBA season. I think about some teams have 8 games, some have 7 games, right? And the Dallas Wings are suffering multiple injuries with only, I think, about 9 players that are fit. So they have the opportunity to sign a player as a backup to fill in for the space they have left, because they need to execute the rest of the season and the roster is thin. So they've signed Amy for... I think the number of games they have left to play. But what the hardship contract also states is if any of the players return fit just before the end, then they have the right to waiver. Or if they like her, they can probably give her then a permanent contract in lieu of next season. So that's what the hardship contract really entails. Okay. So it's just a cover-up personnel type of arrangement, because they can't sign new players. They're not eligible to sign a full contract.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting that into perspective, because we're already scared for our MVP. We thought that we were going to be asking her to be carrying heavy loads on her head, or going to be asking her to do, well, leaving that aside, but you do recall that she signed to a French club, Bruges. How does this, is it in conflict with our existing contract?
Have contracts, what they call here overseas, that is playing in Europe or in Asia. And if you recall, one that made the headlines, Brittany Griner, who was stuck in Russia because she was playing for a Russian club, a few years back, who was brought back home. So it's typical. A lot of these players will play in Turkey, France, Italy, and that's one of the reasons why you hear the campaign now of WNBA Players Association going at loggerheads with the WNBA front office to say we want more money, because it's not as lucrative for a lot of them, and the season is short. By September tops, early October, the season is done. And when did they start? So a lot of them are have that dual purpose. So it's as soon as the WNBA season is done, then they go to their clubs in Europe. Interestingly, sometimes the European teams actually buy them out for the year. I remember Diana Taurasi did that twice, where she sat out the Phoenix Mercury because I think it was Katarina Eklenburg in Russia who paid her like huge money a full season, and they wanted her fresh, so she sat out the WNBA season. And so, you see the WNBA players now fighting for more money because they believe if they can, earn more, they won't need to have those kinds of dual contracts. So just to answer your question directly, it doesn't affect our contract. The WNBA season is short. Besides, the Dallas Wings won't be going into the playoffs. So come, I think, September 11, 12, thereabout, that should be their last regular season game. They're done. And even if they choose to sign her, she can't play again this season until next season. So she can still go back to our French club and compete for them when the European season starts, which is also about, I think, October as well.
Okay, Femi, finally, before we let you go, we can't let you go without talking about the Tigers, the men's national basketball team. Everybody was hoping that Nigeria would somehow become both men and women's champions of basketball on the African continent. Didn't happen. They lost to Senegal rather heavily, if I may say. In your opinion, you look at the coaching, you look at the quality of players that we had, and there are those who have argued that the honest truth is that we can never, ever get our NBA players to play for AfroBasket, because this is their off-season. This is when the time they'll be resting, and the AfroBasket really does nothing for them in terms of their career progression. The question for me is, going by that, how can we ensure that we can get a competitive team that can erase this shame, if you want to call it that, of winning just one AfroBasket in the near future?
Let me quickly backdrop of something you said, getting our NBA players to play. I don't believe that's totally true, that we can't get them to play. Our Farouk Aminu showed up, every tournament from 2013. In fact, from London 2012 qualifiers, right? And those guys played when they were in the league. And our Farouk stayed for a very long time in the league, a very long time, over 12 years. Ike Diogu did the same thing, right? So we had him on board as well. And we've seen Chimezie Metu also play, but of course he fell out. Team Asra is out. Josh Okogie plays in the NBA as well. So we've seen quite a number of NBA players play for Nigeria during the offseason. And I beg to also say that some of these players themselves actually pay for their insurance to play for Nigeria just in case they get injured because their teams are not covering up for it. So that's how much patriotic some of these guys are who have played in times past. And I think they don't get enough credit for it because they don't throw any tantrum. They don't come and be dramatic. And I dare say for a fact that I think we have the basketball players who have played for Nigeria in times past have probably been the most professional and the most patriotic, of all the athletes who have come from abroad to represent the country. Because you never hear them say anything, of course, until the last time where, the house was on fire and they had to run out of it. Speaking about the quality of the team right now, I felt this is not the best crop, definitely, agreeing with you, that could represent the country. And it's not far-fetched, it's the maladministration. Some people opted out, some people are disgruntled. Metu was captain the last time, he's opted out. We don't want to go into all of that. But this crop of players are not the best. But did they give a good performance? Absolutely. I told someone, I said, what we don't run away with in the men's category that we run away with the women's is that we have, the kind of robust talents, in women's basketball that no other African team has, right? If you look at the NCAA, if you look at the WNBA, which we just spoke about, we have Nigerians stand head and shoulders above any other African country. That's why we can do 2 weeks of preparation and we'll still beat Senegal, Mali, and all those people. But on the men's side, the competition is stiffer, right? So if you don't prepare well, if your team is not in the right top shape of mind, if you don't have great coaching, that gap will show. I can tell you very freely that the Senegalese guys had 4 months of preparation. They went to Europe, they played Poland, they played a lot of friendly matches because I'm somewhat close to the general manager of the Senegalese national team, Makandai, who also works for the Dallas Mavericks. And Nigeria has always found a way to beat them, at the AfroBasket for men's. And they've always taken it with, like a slap on the face. So they came real prepared this time around, got all the best players they could get, and, that was the difference. If you look at our performance through the group stage, we really had 1 or 2 standout players. It was Josh Okogie who was carrying the team. Every other player, you see the numbers, is below double digits, 10 points, 8 points, 9 points. Uwamu will have a flash here and there. Okoye will come through. Agada will come through. Kao was doing his thing. But we played the Senegalese side that was more prepared, that was more hungry. You could see they played to their strength. They knew what our weaknesses were. They were big, so we were even scared to run through the paints because the bodies were just not there. Our shooting always slumpy. We've never been great at it. And they beat us to the tact. And it showed. Just before I move on, I also want to say that I think we also showed ourselves in the game against Cameroon. That last quarter was abysmal. I think it opened us up to see some frailties, and they took advantage of that in the second quarter of that game. And Senegal just blew us out, and immediately they got that advantage. There was no going back from there.
Wow. Okay. Unfortunately, the Tigers, the men's national basketball team of Nigeria, fell short on the African continent. Hopefully, the next time around, they'll be much, much better. We've been speaking to our WNBA special correspondent out there in the United States, Femi Adefeso. Thank you so much for coming thugh tonight. You're still watching Game, and we'll take a short break. When we return, plenty of football. Don't forget that today was the start of the final rites for football legend Peter Rufai, who will be buried tomorrow. All this and much more after the break.